Wake up, gamers, and welcome back to Waketober. And this is a brand new episode of Yeah, I've Played. My name is Andrew Taylor.
My name is Matt Hall.
And today, we're going to be checking out Alan Wake's American Nightmare. Alan Wake's American Nightmare was created by Remedy Entertainment and published by Microsoft Studios to Xbox Live Arcade in February of 2012. And then, more importantly, released on Windows the following month. The game is both a sequel and a spin-off from Alan Wake and has a much smaller scope with a focus on advancing the Alan Wake gameplay and furthering the story of the eponymous character. The story takes place over 3 loops of the same night, and we're going to talk about all of it in detail, so here is your spoiler warning. And you know, Matt, well, actually, Jesus, this stuff's so hot. I don't understand.
Yeah, I don't know.
Running around like a forest with like 12 shirts on? This is ridiculous.
The gun can stay if you, just in case.
Okay, we might need it later. As a refresher, Alan Wake is the story of a famous fiction author who takes a trip to rural Bright Falls, Washington with his wife Alice in hopes of breaking his 2-year writer's block and finding some relaxation. Upon arriving to their cabin on Cauldron Lake, Alice falls and is dragged down into the lake, and Alan goes on an action-packed, psychologically thrilling journey to save her. The last time we saw Alan, he had successfully fought against the Dark Presence and released Alice back into the real world. 2 years later, a more experienced and powerful Alan continues his battle against the Dark Presence and himself. I'll give us the basics of each loop and then we'll talk about it in detail afterwards. We open somewhere in Arizona on the Cardinal Motel. An Old Gods of Asgard tour bus is seen parked outside. As we zoom into a room, we see one Barry Wheeler, on tour with the band, passed out on the bed near an empty pizza box. An episode of Night Springs, the game's Twilight Zone parallel show, plays on the TV. This episode is written by Alan Wake and revolves around a man who is the champion of light, battling against and searching for the Herald of Darkness. Of course, this man is none other than Alan Wake himself, and the Herald of Darkness being his evil doppelganger, Mr. Scratch. After an explosive attack from Mr. Scratch, Alan wakes up in the desert. A sinking cabin is seen in front of him. He finds his signature flashlight and pistol and makes his way into the darkness. A manuscript page Alan receives from a local mechanic named Emma tasks him with causing a satellite to crash down to Earth. We will discuss the game now.
Initiating discussion mode.
So what was your first reaction to going into American Nightmare from the last game?
I went into it with very low expectations because everyone that I know who is an Alan Wake fan that talked about it is like, it's not bad, it's all right. And I was like, oh, well, even when I've heard guys from Remedy talk about it, they wanted to kind of take a load off after creating such a complex thing with Alan Wake and
Sure.
the whole multimedia experience there. Just to make a fun game.
Yeah.
And I did find this was more akin to Death Rally in that it's arcadey. It was Xbox Live Arcade, which are, I don't know if people watching this are all even aware of what that was, but
yeah,
it was basically a online service where you could download or I think stream in some cases.
I think so, yeah. It was originally intended for, smaller games that are more arcade focused, and that was before games were as widely digitally available on consoles.
Yeah, so you wouldn't get the, big AAA title digital necessarily, but you'd get these smaller, definitely a step up from Flash games and everything, but they just weren't as long or complex or even graphically as intense.
Yeah, we're talking games, if you're familiar with Geometry Wars. I remember that was a big one. I
think
played.
Alien Hominid was originally one of the big ones.
So it was kind of cool. It seems like Remedy had the wording they used in one of the interviews was, we had the opportunity to make a game for it, so maybe there was a reach out from Microsoft, hey, we're looking for a cool new experience. I imagine it would probably acted a lot as odd man out on the Xbox Live Arcade, because at that time, if it was mostly arcade games or smaller experiences, this is a little bit more dense than it's given credit, I think.
Yeah, so I guess that's what I came to quickly understand was, it's definitely, it feels a little bit different from Alan Wake in terms of just how the game actually plays.
Sure.
It's similar, but it does feel a little more streamlined, more action-oriented. But I was surprised at how in-depth the actual narrative was, and looking for more context to what's been happening in the 2 years since Alan Wake. Most Remedy games take place in real time.
Yeah.
They take place in the year they were released, and the characters move and age throughout time as we do.
Which is gutsy, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, at this point, he's been stuck in the dark place for 2 years. I didn't know that it had the direct continuity like that going into it.
I thought the same as you. From the stuff that I had heard, it seemed like there was like this kind of like, it was like, lower your expectations. It's an Xbox Live Arcade title. It's kind of, its own thing. I was pleasantly surprised. It was actually, I thought it was much better than I anticipated going into it.
Yeah.
If we want to talk about the controls and how they're updated from the last game, I want to preface it by saying it makes sense because Alan, in the first game, he's a writer, alcoholic. Like we talked about this on the last year I've played. He's not an athlete really, but in this game, it's 2 years after, so it kind of makes sense that he'd be, he's a lot more fluid. He moves a lot better. Man, this felt like the first game's combat perfected.
Yeah.
To me, like it feels really good. The first game, like there's moments where like obviously it's a different kind of game and you have to learn it. But even after so, you're like, okay, I can see how this could be improved. And I think they did that with this game. It feels great.
Yeah, the combat's a lot of fun.
I really enjoy fighting in this game, and that's a big focus of it, which is good.
Yeah, and there is a lot more variety in the weapons available to you.
Yeah.
Like, as you play, you find manuscript pages, and you can use those to cash in and unlock all sorts of weapons. I wound up using the assault rifle a lot.
Assault rifle was great, and it's so bizarre to see our boy Alan Wake carrying an assault rifle.
Yeah.
Like, it's really silly. One of the first ones you can find is an SMG.
Yeah.
Which isn't too crazy, but I'm sorry, was it an SMG or an Uzi? I think it was an Uzi.
I don't remember exactly.
It was an automatic pistol of some kind.
We'll put the correction in right here,
Yes.
and we'll see if Andrew is right or totally fucking wrong.
When you collect the manuscript pages, you need certain amounts of them to unlock the guns that you find in like these like black alligator skin cases.
Yeah, like Resident Evil style like weapon cases.
Yeah, which is really cool. And there is an explanation as to why these exist in this place canonically that makes sense that we'll probably get to later. So if it throws you off, it does. There is a good reason for it later.
Did you use the nail gun very much?
I used the nail gun right when I found it at the beginning. I've used it a couple times. There's also an arcade mode that acts as like a horde mode. We'll get into that a little bit later. I did. It's not my favorite, but I thought it was okay.
I thought it was going to be really cool because like in the marketing for the game and on the cover art and stuff, they focus on the nail gun.
They do show the nail gun.
And I was like, oh, nail gun, like that's kind of badass.
Yeah.
Like, it's a non-conventional weapon. I think that, I've seen some action movies where they use it, and it's always kind of like pretty brutal.
And the movie with our boy Christian Bale.
Yeah. What movie?
American Psycho.
Oh yeah.
Not American Nightmare. He uses a nail gun on a guy, right? Point blank. That's how he kills him.
Sure. I don't know. I haven't seen that movie in 15 years.
I'm pretty sure. So there's a correlation you can draw there. But yeah, the nail gun, it's cool.
Yeah, I didn't use it that much.
A little. It was a little bit downplayed.
Yeah.
I remember only finding it once or twice.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay.
I used the assault rifle almost exclusively through most of the game.
I wish I could watch you destroying everyone with the assault rifle.
It was a lot of fun.
Alan Wake is a game where the pistol is just so good. There's a lot of games where the pistol just rocks. Probably harder than it should, but it's just really fucking fun to use.
Yeah.
What about the graphics?
The character models are a little bit more simplified. They still have that signature Alan Wake hideousness.
It feels a little better.
Yeah. But I don't know. I thought the game looked fine, especially
Yeah.
for something that was, an had more constraints because of the file size, you know? I'm
For
not
sure.
sure if they amped things up a bit for the PC port.
Probably.
I don't know.
Maybe a
I
little
never
bit.
got a chance to play the Xbox Live Arcade version.
Yeah, Matt and I both played it on. I played mine on Steam. I think we both did. You coming up, kitten? You want to hang out and talk about Alan Wake? I don't think there's any cats in Alan Wake, so we're gonna hopefully in the sequel. Yeah, I thought it looked great. I think the kind of a little bit stripped down graphics. It takes place in Arizona, so it's a lot of desert, which is a nice change of pace from the first game where you're spending it all in like this kind of rural Washington.
Yeah, and I also like the whole game takes place at night.
So initially, you get that manuscript page from Emma, and hopefully we can discuss this in a way that, obviously there's spoilers, but it'd be cool if we could talk about it in a way that we understand, like discussing only what we knew at the time. So like when we
Right.
first meet Emma, who is a mechanic at the motel, she seems like she already knows Alan. She's like, oh, it's you again, or something like that.
Right.
But she's also like, but Alan he doesn't seem thrown off that she knows him.
No,
but it's not
because-
that he's Alan Wake, a famous writer. He just doesn't seem like he's just like, yeah, you know who I am?
Well,
Like,
because the game opens up, and this is where I think it's very helpful to have played Alan Wake, or at least to have watched our previous videos.
that'd be a really good way to do it.
The thing that was really beneficial to me in this game was knowing, and I think I started to say this earlier, this is 2 years that he's been in the Dark Place.
Yes.
The 2 DLC episodes in Alan Wake, The Writer and The Signal, begin to tell us a little bit more about the rules of the Dark Place and how, if you're, the Dark Place, you enter it through a portal in Cauldron Lake, basically.
Yeah.
That's not to say that's the only entrance to it, but Alan goes into the lake and he's in the Dark Place. And in the Dark Place, pure acts of creation can find their way into reality. And he explains in the game that there are parts of the world, of our prime reality, where the fabric between realms is a little bit more malleable, a little bit looser.
It's said that those areas may be worn down.
Yeah. And so
the-
you can push your will from the Dark Place, your creative will,
Yes.
into those places and manifest things. And so he's manifesting, in a way, this story
Yeah.
that is written, it's the form of it is, rather than the manuscript of Departure, like in the first game, it's in the script for a episode of Night Springs.
Which-
That's the written piece, that's the act of creation.
Which is a real episode that he wrote. And there's reference, maybe not entirely by name, but they reference that he was a writer on Night Springs.
Yeah.
So since he has that connection to the real world through writing, which seems to be an important mechanic of the Dark Presence, it allows him to materialize in Arizona and have an effect on that world at that time.
And when the game opens up, he pretty much states very explicitly how it works and how
Yeah, he does.
and I was like, oh, I think that if I hadn't played the first 2 games, or the first game and the 2 DLCs, that might have just gone over my head as like a little bit of exposition.
Yeah.
But he explains pretty explicitly that he's using his powers to do this, that when he does this, he tends to kind of lose his memory and not always know everything that came before that moment.
Right.
And he is purposely doing this, to achieve a goal. And this time around, his goal obviously ultimately is to escape the Dark Place. But we find out there's other goals in as well. There's the conflict with Mr. Scratch that you mentioned at the top of the episode. But when he didn't really seem fazed by the reaction, from Emma, I think that's because he knew that he was
existing in this world that he created. Okay. I understood that soon after, but initially I was like, how does this person know Alan without there being that tie of, oh, he's the famous author? So I thought that was interesting.
Right. And
that's additionally played on because she mentions, I believe in that first interaction, they discuss Mr. Scratch because she initially thinks that it's him. And she had attended a party that Mr. Scratch was at the motel, I believe, that eventually moved to a diner that was close by. And she had witnessed some of the things that he was doing. And he was very charming and cool and had an allure to him. And he's the life of the party. from that point on, you get the manuscript page. And so you have all these puzzle pieces. You don't really know how they fit just yet. You get the manuscript page that calls for you to somehow manifest that a satellite crashes down from the sky. And to do that, you have to make your way to the oil derrick, which is there's a specific pump that you have to get to, and you have to match it to how the manuscript describes the scene. As far as we can get into the specifics in just a second, but you have to like change a CD to be playing. You have to turn a light on, turn a faucet so that the oil is moving. But before you do that, on your way, you run into a radio that gives you an interesting little piece, and then a TV that plays something from Mr. Scratch. I think the TV is first, or is it the radio? No, I think it's the radio that you find first, right?
I don't know. I think it depends on how you tackle it.
This game is pretty open.
Yeah, it is. And I think, what you mentioned there with you need to do things, specifically match the scene to the page. The other thing that I want to make sure is explicit here, he mentions how when you're using it has to be a pure act of creation. That's why Dr. Hartman in the first game was trying to find artists, specifically because they can make pure acts of creation. He's saying that as a writer and as a novelist, his powers of creation are maybe more acute than others, and he can write very specific scenarios and see those come into reality. But he also mentions that if it's not done in a certain way, and it's not done with like very careful attention to detail, it can go wrong, and that a story is kind of a living thing, and it's not always what you write directly, but also what you imply.
I was going to say that it was very heavy-handed with, and there's been other Alan Wake stuff that mentions this. It's like if, what you imply and what's the opposite of what you're saying and everything around it is as true and maybe more important than your intended, I'm going to make an apple appear on the table.
And so, I think that if you're not totally keyed into him explaining that at the top of the game, it might be kind of like, so what? I just have this little fetch quest where I have to do these specific things for some reason. I feel like that could be lost on someone if they weren't.
That is a good point.
So it's like the point of the loop is to do a very specific thing in a very specific order. And the reason you do it multiple times is because he's not always getting it right. And if you don't get it exactly right, he's not going to get his intended outcome for what he's trying to do. So I just want to make sure that's clear to everybody as we go deeper into this, because otherwise it's just going to sound like, why the fuck are you doing all this stuff and so in such a specific way?
It's a little bit like a monkey's paw scenario, whereas
or a monkey's maw.
A monkey's maw. Is that another thing?
Yeah, well, there's the maw and the paw. There's a whole monkey family.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot. I never read the sequels. And to explain that, that's like, we'll give you what you ask for, but you're going to have a repercussion that is unexpected.
Yeah, it's like, if you're not asking for a specific thing.
Mm-hmm. Like if you want $1 million, well, that $1 million might come from a charitable organization or something like that. It has
or it might come from an insurance policy because your family gets killed or something.
Oh, yeah.
It's like...
yeah. So you have to be very careful how you word things. So as you're making your way downtown, I believe I found the radio first, and we'll get more into it, but there's a couple different locations that you go to, and there's a good amount of stuff to do, but they are not linear. It is like...
No, they're pretty wide open.
Yeah, and I don't want to say you're not going to be dropped into World of Warcraft, like an expansive landscape, but it's like a nice sized chunk that you can explore.
And I would say even more so than in Alan Wake, the exploration is rewarded with the manuscript pages and the weapons and little bonuses.
It also you can go too far out, and it'll let you know, like some dark storms come in or whatever, and it's like, hey, you don't need to go this far, and I'm like, okay, cool. And the manuscript pages they're plentiful in this game. It seems like they're where you would expect somebody that's exploring to find them.
Yeah.
Which is also very helpful because it's used to unlock those guns.
For something that is as simple as this game is, the levels are designed really well. Where it's like, what's over here? It's like it's the kind of thing where like, when you're playing like Skyrim or Fallout with those big maps, it's like, every X number of steps you should run into something.
Yeah.
And I think they really pulled that off here.
Absolutely. And there's that concept. I don't remember if it was Remedy talking about it or one of the Bethesda things that I've watched where they talk about, I think Jordan mentioned this on one of our last episodes, having, regardless of where you are, there should be a couple landmarks that you can see.
Yep.
This game does that pretty well as well. Moving through the world after interacting with Emma, the first other thing that I came upon was the radio.
Right.
Where when you play it, we were introduced to a new DJ whose name I wrote down.
I'm going to guess here.
Okay.
Buck Funnyman.
Eddie Rodman is the name of the DJ in this world.
I wasn't totally off.
No.
I got 3 letters.
You were close. I don't know if he's going to play as large of a role as Pat Maine from the first game.
Well, he's,
I think he's only a voice.
Do you mean like
game.
in the continuing story of Alan Wake?
Yeah.
I would say not, because I don't know if we're gonna revisit Nevada or you say it's Texas actually.
Arizona.
Yeah.
I don't know if we will, though. I'm sure it'll be referenced. It seems like a lot of these. Well, actually, it's another, we're getting into this like actually. None of this may have taken place in our real reality, or at least some of it maybe. It's hard to say.
Yes. Let's just get this out of the way right now. Alan is in the dark place writing this thing, and he is interacting with these people in this world. So there's one layer of reality. So you have layer 1, Alan in the dark place. Layer 2, Alan in Arizona.
Yes.
Layer 3, Alan inside of the TV that Barry is watching.
An episode of Night Springs.
Right. So is that episode of Night Springs broadcasting in some, weird magical way what's happening in Arizona?
Is only Barry able to see it even though he's asleep?
Is it entirely a work of fiction? And the way it's piercing into reality is through the television.
Yes.
And that the reality, prime reality, is experiencing the Night Springs TV show, and fictional reality is what's happening in Arizona.
Yes.
It's impossible for me to say, because the thing that as I read more and more, I have a very hard time, and I've even tried to start to map it out a little bit. I have a really hard time understanding the lines between prime reality and the work of fiction.
Are those established terms in the community?
No, I'm just trying to say prime reality as in like, the shared reality, like real reality, because there is, because it's not to say that, it's, what is reality? I feel like there's several layers of reality.
For sure. So it is, as you're saying, it's very difficult to say definitively where any of this takes place or what effects it has in the other layers.
Yeah, so will we ever see this DJ again? Eddie Rodman?
Eddie Rodman.
Hard to say, because he may have just been a character that Alan made up for the sake of the story.
Yeah, that is interesting. But he does, in his short time in the Alan Wake world, he does shed some light on some very interesting things that have happened since Alan has disappeared these past 2 years.
Yes.
Yes. So cut out that silence.
No.
No, you're not going to cut out the silence?
I refuse.
I just wanted to make sure that I remember to say once again that the Alan Wake lore and story is as deep as you want to go. It just keeps going. So that's a touch actually really deep into how far this stuff goes, but bringing it back up to the surface of this game at least, that first radio show that you listen to, he's talking about this old band, Old Gods of Asgard, who used to be real popular back in the 70s and 80s before they retired and were kind of doing their own thing. But as it turns out, they're coming back out. they're back on tour. They're making a comeback.
As was foreshadowed in Alan Wake, Barry Wheeler says, if I ever get the chance, I'm going to manage these guys, put them back on tour and everything.
And wouldn't you have it?
He did.
He did. I almost said Barry Wake. Barry Wheeler is their new touring manager, and I think just their band manager.
Yeah, he got him back in the studio. He got him. He helped to update their sound.
Yeah, they got a couple new tracks playing on the radio as our DJ friend plays for you, and he's interviewing all three of those guys: Tor and Odin Anderson, as well as Barry. They're all there talking about just doing promo. Which is odd that they would do it on maybe it's a larger radio station, but I don't know if that small Arizona place would be the place. Anyway, I don't know.
They're there. Well, are they there?
I don't know. I don't think they're in Arizona.
What's the hotel that we see at the beginning of the game?
I said the name of it earlier, but I've forgotten.
That's not the same. That's not the same hotel that.
No.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
A lot of motels and hotels and a lot of roadside motels in the Remedy universe.
Yes, and it's difficult to keep them all, organized away as to what happens in each one, but they are all significant. Anyway, the main takeaway that I got from that is that Barry's he's the new manager. The boys are back in town. They have some new music. I thought there's actually a lot of moments in this game that I thought were legitimately funny. I don't know if you felt the same thing, and I also don't know if it was more funny to me because I'm so submerged in Alan Wake stuff right now that I feel like I know the characters. And so these little interactions that they have and the little quirks, hilarious. I thought like all of these sections with the DJ interviewing those guys were hilarious. Did you think they were funny?
Yeah, I thought they were funny, and I also think it's worth noting that that the characters come off as very strange and senile in the interview. I'm meaning the Anderson brothers from the old Gods of Asgard band. Mm-hmm. But they do mention, I think, in some of the manuscript pages and in the interview that, and you hear the song, you hear their new single, Balance Slays the Demon. They don't sound like old men.
No.
And they mention that that somehow when they get in the studio and they start playing, it's as if they're transported back in time to their youth and they sound as fresh as they ever did.
As they ever did. And Barry takes all the credit for that. As our slimy pal would. Well, I thought that was...
It's funny because they mentioned that it sounds, I shouldn't say as fresh as they ever did. I guess as fresh as they ever did, but it sounds like they did in the 70s.
Yes.
And he mentions that they need something to make it modern, to make it pop for a new audience. So Barry has the wonderful idea of adding synthesizers.
Oh, yeah.
Which is it's funny because I think that's kind of a trope is how do we make our sound modern? We'll use synths. Computers.
Yeah. I think that also, that kind of discussion where, and not Pat Maine.
Eddie
mentions this a couple times where he's like, you guys aren't no spring chickens or whatever. And he's kind of ribbing them a little bit. And I think, they throw it back at him. He's like, who are you calling old? I think that kind of served as a metaphor for how old these guys are. And then you listen to the music and it doesn't sound like it would be them that's making it. Because, it's Poets of the Fall.
And you did mention Poets of the Fall. In case anyone doesn't know, the real life, real world band, Poets of the Fall, is playing the character of the fake band, Old Gods of Asgard, in the Alan Wake series.
Yes, and I think you mentioned it in our Alan Wake, I've played, but the guys from Poets of the Fall have a vetted relationship with Remedy.
They go all the way back to Max Payne.
Yeah. I thought it was really cool. I thought this was a cool song. It's cheesy. They have a lot of ow, a bunch of yows and
well, we'll discuss the song a little bit more in depth again when as in a lot of Remedy games, there's a sort of set piece centered around that song eventually.
Yes, and the lyrics. I dissected them a little while ago with my giant brain, and just like with anything else, they have some interesting tidbits in them.
Yes.
So
let's save the most interesting tidbit for the end.
We will. So from the
hotel, Holiday Inn. If your girl starts acting up, then call her friend.
That's a sin.
So the three narrative devices in the game, four I should say, really are conversations with NPCs, manuscript pages, radio broadcasts, and the televisions.
Yes. The televisions act mostly like they did in Alan Wake, and every time you interact with one, you get a broadcast from one Mr. Scratch.
And like directly to you as well.
Yes, it seems like he filmed himself in different scenarios doing different things to torture and rib Alan.
And to torture victims that he has with him. He's a serial killer.
He really is. In these videos, these little videotapes that you see of Mr. Scratch, it really shows how brutal he is. And like he murders, I think, at least 2 people on camera that we see.
More so than I thought they would do.
Yeah.
I thought it'd be like the kind of thing where it's like...
It cuts away or something?
It cuts away or just like, it's just implied that he probably kills the guy.
Yeah.
You know?
No, this one, it's not like full screen, but I don't remember when, in one of them, it does show him killing a guy, a gentleman that has a bag over his head. But it served as it was earlier on in the game, and it did definitely serve to show how serious he is, like Mr. Scratch is, as we talked about. But I didn't realize until much later in the game that has a lot more direct relation to the game and what you do in it. Is that something you picked up on?
I'm not sure what you mean.
The gentleman who he killed is somebody that you can find later on in the game.
Oh.
Yeah.
I did not pick up on that.
I didn't pick up on this either until I did some... I had a hunch. This is after I think I beat the game. But we'll get to that a little bit later because we're already... It's already a train wreck.
What did you think of these Mr. Scratch videos?
Sorry, I wasn't ready for any questions today. I'd like to just talk about Alan Wake if we can.
Okay. Too scary.
No, sorry. I'd like to just talk about Old Gods of Asgard. I'm not here to talk about Alan Wake. It is too scary. I thought they were helpful to show, how just messed up and violent Mr. Scratch was. He also goes on in the later ones to talk about... He fills in some gaps. He talks about some horrible things that he has done, horrible things that he plans to do, specifically towards Alice, Alan's wife, and Barry, Alan's wife. And he kind of explains that he is, at one point, he's zeroing in on, or at least he's talking about how he's zeroing in on doing these horrible things to taunt Alan.
Yeah.
As well as it kind of sheds a little bit of a light on what he is capable of doing in these different realities.
Right, and so at the end of Alan Wake, you first see Mr. Scratch.
You do.
So it's Zane, Alan, and Mr. Scratch. And Mr. Scratch is seeing Alan, and they kind of do the mirror thing for a second.
Yeah.
And he's like, don't worry about that. That's Mr. Scratch. Your friends will meet him while you're gone.
We're going to be making an Xbox Live arcade game. You'll deal with him then.
But he says, don't worry about that. Basically, I think he says your friends will meet him while you're gone. So while Alan's in the dark place, Thomas Zane...
Is that what he said?
Yeah. Thomas Zane knows already that Mr. Scratch will be entering reality and, taking place as if he were Alan's evil doppelganger, which he is. I mean, he's a direct, mirror of Alan. And
he's the ego of him, right? Kind of all the negative aspects of Alan amplified.
Yeah, with no inhibitions.
Yeah. He's the epitome of that.
And so... I thought it was strange that they would just, at the end of Alan Wake, it's right before the final boss battle, I believe. You have a little flashback to your apartment, and it's a nightmare version of the apartment, and it's, it's a sort of trick being played on Alan. It's a mirage created by the Dark Presence, trying to keep him there, And I just thought it was really odd that I was like, when I first played Alan Wake, I was like, what?
Yeah.
I have a doppelganger and you're not gonna, he's in the game for 5 seconds.
Yeah. But he was mentioned significantly enough that I do remember it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that interaction that you had.
Because, it's a very striking scene. And then, but even Thomas Zane's like, don't worry about that.
Which leads you to question, if Thomas Zane is aware of Mr. Scratch and what he's capable of, why did he kind of minimize that to Alan?
Right. Is it because it really doesn't matter? Or is it because Zane has some sort of
agenda that...
Or he just doesn't care about Alan?
Yeah.
Or, it's hard. I don't want to assume either way what it means, if it's nefarious or not. But so it should be stated that Alan's doppelganger is Mr. Scratch. Mr. Scratch is in the real world, in reality, while Alan's in the dark place.
Yes, he has a much more powerful, like he just, I would say he entirely is. Like, I think it seems like he still has to operate in the shadows. He seems like he's a little sensitive to light.
Yeah, everything I've read says that he does seem to come out at night or in the darkness, and that he does have an aversion to light. Like they do.
Do you remember that one?
Supplemental materials further on that kind of corroborate that idea.
So yeah, I thought they were interesting. It was interesting to see. It was more like if you paid attention to kind of the subtext of everything that Mr. Scratch says in those little episodes, it really builds a lot and explains what he's capable of, what he is, and what he intends to do. So yeah, I thought that was really cool.
And the other thing I think is striking about it, similar to in the first game, there's the writer in the cabin videos that you come across, where Alan looks at the TV and he's seeing himself within the Cauldron Lake cabin. This is my understanding. I could be wrong. It's all open to interpretation. That's reality. What's on those TVs, and I think it's interesting that the live action parts in these games are showing what's happening in reality.
Oh, wow. So you're saying that is like, there could be some flexibility to that, but that probably is likely what it is, that the live action stuff is real. Mike, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Wow.
And there's also sort of live action cutscenes in American Nightmare.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that all the live action stuff is reality, but I'm saying like the live action TV broadcasts specifically, what you're seeing on the televisions, are a portal into reality. And I think it's interesting that throughout the Remedy universe, there's multiple instances of that television also being a portal when Night Springs is on.
So it's almost potentially a way for the dark presence to kind of propagate its viewership or something like that. It's like it acts as like a...
The details beyond that are murky to me. I just think it's interesting that you see the television as a portal to and from the realms.
Wow.
That and the only reason it really struck me was because I did just rewatch those Writer in the Cabin videos, because you see them, there's 7 of them throughout Alan Wake, which is like a 10, 15-hour game. And so
a lot of it can get lost on you.
You're watching like 25 minutes of video across 10 plus hours. You might, and it's like you get one, it's like a minute and a half.
Supplemental.
And then you play the game for 45, 50 minutes before you see another one. You don't totally piece it together necessarily, but when you watch them all together, it's really striking. When you get all that information in one place, and when he does start to notice that he's like, he can see that there's a camera or some sort of like
monitoring device.
Yeah, somehow he's seeing that he's in the TV in some way. It was like, okay, that's something crucial that I'm not fully understanding yet.
Yeah.
And the fact that, Mr. Scratch uses the TV to communicate with you from reality.
There's absolutely something to that, more so than just being a cool thing in the game. Wow.
Yeah, which this isn't the time to go into all sorts of speculative theory stuff, but
yeah,
I thought that was really cool that they used again those live action scenes. And hey, he's a good actor. I like him. It's also really impressive that he's entirely dubbed.
Yeah, that's all lip synced.
The actor is Finnish. That's not his voice. That the voice is Alan Wake. The voice of Mr. Scratch is another actor portraying the voice, and it's. I think it's cool that his performance can come out when he's not actually
doing it.
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean,
it is cool.
Yeah.
It and the voice makes sense for him. I almost feel like the voice actor's voice fits the physical actor more than whatever his real voice is. Like it's very believable. And it's difficult to do those dubs. So it's cool that they did a very good job on them. But man, we're only like the first like 10 minutes into the game so
right.
far.
But yeah, so I think we are just kind of laying out all the pieces because once you actually get into the game, I think I was saying to you, it's like the game is very simple.
Yeah.
But the narrative elements within it are very complex.
Yeah.
So it's deceivingly simple. That's why I could see if you're not a big Wake head.
Is that what we're called now?
I could just see you being a little bit more disappointed with the experience because, while it's fun, I'd say that the game itself, like the campaign, is as fun as the arcade mode. Like the core of the game is you're a guy who runs around and shoots people. Like it's a fun action shooter.
Yeah.
And if you're not, because the story itself is not all that compelling on its own, at least this... not. Yeah, like American Nightmare. If you totally divorce it from the greater story being told, and you just played that, it's like, all right, so it's like a guy's got to defeat his like evil doppelganger, I guess. Like it's hero versus villain. It's a very simple story.
That does give you a much different experience than I didn't consider that at all because if in the time that I've since the last I've played where we first played Alan Wake. And even when I listen back to that video a little bit, like it's painful. I sound like such a moron because I haven't experienced more of the Alan Wake's like supplemental materials. What I'm trying to say is, since then I've like read the comics. I've been working my way through the Alan Wake files. Man, I've been trying to just get start digesting all that extra stuff. And I've been there's a Remedy Discord that you can join. There's also a subreddit which seems like it's a little bit better for long-form discussions on the lore. I hadn't considered that without all that additional knowledge that I have about the game and the story, this game would probably feel a little bit more or less.
Yeah, because like the exciting stuff is it is made exciting by having a deeper understanding of what's going on.
Yeah, and that was just intrinsic to me because I already knew all that context. That's interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people were a little bit turned off.
Yeah, especially if this was the first thing you played.
Yeah.
It'd be like, who the hell are all these characters that I don't like that don't even appear in the game? Like, why would I care about like a bunch of old guys on the radio that I can't even see?
Or some well, I guess in Mr. Scratch not so much, but
right.
Yeah.
And so that's why the Mr. Scratch and Alan thing, it's like that's hero versus villain. That's standard action storytelling.
Yeah. Like, who's Barry? Like, who cares?
Right. And so even the opening with Barry, it'd be like, what the fuck did that even mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's just like it.
And Alan just says, well, I guess Barry landed on his feet, but like, if you don't know who Barry is, like, what the fuck?
I don't think you even would know that that's Barry in the opening cutscene, even though they do introduce Barry by voice later.
It's hilarious to me that there's probably a lot of people that played that game and it's just like, who's this fat dude like wearing his puffy jacket passed out in a motel room? Wow. So that could absolutely color the experience. Mm-hmm. But I find, I've never really done a tremendous deep dive on a game like this, aside from like Elder Scrolls and Fallout. I'll read tons of the wikis and everything, but it's so worth it. And the more I read and the more I check out, the cooler it feels and the better it feels. So it's very rewarding.
Yeah,
because
totally.
You almost feel like your own little detective because you're connecting all these dots because all the information is laid out for you. That's a major theme of, it seems like, all the Remedy games, that you're given the different perspectives, and then you create the sum total of those things in your mind. So when you're at the oil derrick, you're looking at the manuscript page, and it has I think it has 3 things that you have to do to line it up to manifest whatever thing you want to have happen, which is
knock the satellite out of the sky.
Yeah, causing it to crash down and destroy the arrow.
I honestly didn't totally understand why.
It was neither did I. Alan says that. So what, you put the pieces in place, the satellite comes crashing down, destroys the oil derrick, creates a tremendous fire, like right outside of the motel, and
right, because the explosion and all the oil.
Yeah, ignite. He says that it'll keep the Taken away from the motel,
Right, and it seems like that somehow, like the oil derrick, like the hole there, is creating a portal for the Taken to like
they do crawl out of it.
From.
That's right.
And so I don't totally understand that, because also like the Taken, my understanding of the Taken is there are people affected by the Dark Presence. You know, the Dark Presence is like almost like a parasite that like latches onto a human host.
True, it doesn't just create these things.
Yeah, so like, you know, and again, like, you know, maybe this is just a work of fiction, so it doesn't matter. Like the rules don't matter as much.
Right.
But yeah, that was just a little confusing to me. Like, what exactly caused the satellite? Because it's, you know, satellites are also are pretty high up in space.
Yeah. So I have no idea. I think it is just like
fantasy.
For whatever reason, these are the puzzle pieces you have to put together to get the result that you want.
Yeah.
Just because. It's also it's mentioned that these Taken that we are fighting are the product of Mr. Scratch more so than the greater, darker presence.
Right.
And that
yeah.
Because we see some.
They're a little bit different than
I think
the Taken from Bright Falls.
Especially, I think, starting in maybe like the second loop, which we'll get to soon. We see some enemy variation, which is awesome, and I think the first game would have benefited from so much. So after you destroy the derrick, satellite comes crashing down. Not really sure why. You head back and you meet Emma, the mechanic, and you talk to her once more. And I think through that conversation, she divulges that she attended a party that was at the diner next door, and Mr. Scratch was there, and he got into an altercation with somebody. Mm-hmm. And this somebody, then the party moved to the motel, the fight moved to the motel or whatever. So Alan's like, okay, cool, I gotta go check out the diner, see what's going on there. Do you remember going to the diner?
Yeah.
It's
rather uneventful. Like, you know, basically like I think a truck tries to crush you. You know, that is a
it does. Yeah,
it's
you're
a
right.
van or something.
And that kind of feels like when the
possessed object.
Yeah, which there didn't seem to be a ton of in this game.
No, and I appreciated that.
Yeah, there was only a little bit.
Because like as much as I like those, I think they're fine as an occasional obstacle. But like, you know, essentially they're enemies that just charge you.
Yeah.
Which, you know, I prefer the AI to have a little more.
It can be
varied behavior, you know.
For sure.
Just charging, and then pausing, and then charging again is all that enemy does.
Yeah, and you have to just make sure to try to time it so you don't get hit.
Yeah.
Not as engaging as some of the other great fights that you have in this game. So you go to check out the diner, and there's, like you said, it's not very eventful. But I think around this time is when the combat focus of this game starts to show. You start realizing like you've already gotten probably the nail gun. You're checking things out. You're fighting guys. In the diner, you find that there's evidence of a scuffle. I think the windows are all fucked up too. Alan says he can tell that Mr. Scratch had been there. I don't remember exactly what keyed him in there, aside from Emma saying it. And at that point, she might not have mentioned that he was there. Alan knew that he had to go check out the diner. You find a set of keys to the motel. And you scuttle on back to the motel, and you start checking out the rooms. Now, this is something that we were talking about previously that I did not connect yet. In one of the rooms, you find a manuscript page, but in another room, you find a deadman. There's a dead man on the floor.
Oh, and that's the man that Mr. Scratch killed?
That is the man that Mr. Scratch killed, who is also...
Who is it?
The assistant to Dr. Rachel Meadows.
Oh!
Yeah, his name is Tim Barnaby or something.
I mean, that's basically the end of the loop, is when you get in there. You go to the next area, which is a...
It's not the end of the loop.
Oh, I guess I don't mean the end of the loop. No, it's not the end of the loop.
Section,
yes. So each loop has 3 scenarios.
Like settings.
Yeah. And so the second setting is a research center with a giant telescope in it.
It is the Mount Redtooth Observatory. I don't really know what those are. They use it to look at the sky or some shit. So that prompts you...
Exactly. That's exactly what they do.
They look at the sky or some shit. So you grab the keys from the dead guy, who you don't know who it is at this point.
Right.
But I do think by this time you had seen the video of Mr. Scratch in that hotel room. The guy has a bag over his head. It's pretty brutal. He like slits his throat.
Yeah.
You see him like try to his hand comes up on the table where the camera is, trying to grab a gun or something. he kills the fuck out of this guy, and like he screams. It's pretty fucked up.
Yeah, he dead him good.
Yeah, he really did. Outside of the diner, one of the trucks that you see, it's like one of those white vans. It says Mount Redtooth Observatory on it. Mm-hmm. After getting the key from the diner that was left there, you go find the dead guy, Mr. Barnaby or whatever his name is, and he is dressed like he's wearing like the outfit that people that work there wear. Alan makes a note. I think he says out loud. He's like they must have something to do with this. So he grabs the keys off of the dead guy, and then he makes his way to the observatory. From there, I don't think he knows why he's there, but he knows that something there is related to what he's doing.
Right, I think that's something where he writes the scenario, the situation he's in, and that's the memory loss thing, where he doesn't always know what he has to do, but he trusts that because he's in his story,
that he's being guided.
And that he'll make the right choices because he made the choices to begin with.
Yes.
He wrote that down, so even though if he doesn't remember what he's supposed to do, instinct will kick in, is the hope.
And maybe there's a giant thing that says why he should go there, and we're both forgetting it. But regardless, I do think what you're saying is true.
I think you're right. It's also just the clue here. He's like, he's trying to, find and defeat Mr. Scratch, so it's like, follow the clues. If the fucking observatory, maybe that's the next place to investigate.
Yes. So you make your way there. A lot of fighting. There's like a cool like spiral that you have to go up to. Tons of little pockets.
Yeah. So the observatory itself is on a hill. And, there is the winding road around the hill, and there's like little side buildings, like garages and stuff as you go. It's a very complete map.
Yeah.
Where these aren't huge maps.
Not gigantic, no.
They're not like the kind of maps you would have they're not like Counter-Strike maps either.
No,
but
it's not a little arena.
They're very like, just well constructed, realistic areas. They're also fun to explore and find collectibles in.
This is such a weird reference. It reminds me of Polly Pockets or Mighty Maxes. Mm-hmm. Remember, it's like a small contained area, but when you look closer, you're like, oh my god, this is very rich.
Yeah, totally.
That's probably a bad reference for how I feel about the levels in American Nightmare, but it's kind of the same concept.
It's entirely self-contained. It's a totally self-contained thing that, like, from afar you say, oh yes, it's the observatory. Oh yes, it's the motel.
Yes, and I believe.
But when you look at it, again, up close, there's always little nooks and crannies that are like, hey, what the hell's over here?
And it encourages you to explore those spots. And I think you can see the observatory, talking to the landmarks from earlier. I believe you can see the observatory from the two other locations in the game. I think you can see like the lights from it in the motel, and then the drive-in is the last place that you go. And I think you can see it from there too, just like off in the distance, which is, they did that so much in the first game. You could see the lodge from here, or you could see Stucky's gas station like up there. And so it was cool that they continued that in this game.
I don't remember that, but I'll trust you.
You should. You make your way up to the observatory, to the main building that has a gigantic telescope. And you try to establish, you go to the little beep boop thing to get into the security door.
It's like an intercom.
Yeah, and there's like a camera like beep, like looks down at you. And you start speaking with a woman named Dr. Rachel Meadows, who is I guess maybe she works there.
I think she's the sexy head researcher.
Yeah, she researches sexy heads herself. And she is very, like, not hostile, but, like, not into talking to you. And I think quickly you manage to, I think, a little power, with a little help of the power of Alan wrote this story, he manages to quickly understand that she was interacting with Mr. Scratch before Alan got there. They had some sort of bad interaction, and he's able to make her believe that, like, I'm not him. I know he looks like me. He's imposting. Imposting.
You're saying he was eating some pasta.
He was eating pasta.
Yeah, it was very starchy.
He was getting it all over the lab coats. It was fucked up.
Oh, my pasta's done.
Oh, okay. Do you want to?
No, I don't care. I'll let it cool down.
Okay, well, it's still in the oven.
I have a timer on it. Automatic shut off.
Oh, that's good. That's cool.
Yeah.
I'm glad they implemented that feature. So she kind of reluctantly is still like, I don't know about this, but she lets you in because I believe Dr. Meadows is aware that there's the Taken outside, and she knows that it's dangerous. You make your way in, and there's a TV on the left side of the stairs that lead up into the observatory where Mr. Scratch has some sort of... It happens a couple times in the game. I don't remember exactly which video that was.
It doesn't matter exactly which video. It's in every fucking section you go to, there's going to be a radio, there's going to be a TV, there's going to be manuscript pages, and there's going to be an NPC.
Yeah. And he dunks on Alan or whatever, and Alan's like, son of a bitch. You go upstairs and you start talking to Dr. Meadows. She tells you that she is at the observatory at night after hours because her assistant, who you begin, it took me a long time to realize that was the dead guy that you found, which Alan doesn't mention. Now that I'm thinking about it, I do not believe he mentions talking about that guy.
No, I don't think he even says, like, I spared her the details or anything. Because I didn't make that connection, really.
Neither did I. I was really... And I don't even know if they say his name. Maybe she must. Is there something in your glass?
I think it's just on the bottom of my cup.
Okay, that's good.
So why is she there at night?
She's there at night because her assistant, the guy who's dead...
It's not because that's the best time to see the stars?
It is, but she's been doing this for a couple of years, so she's over it. She was at a party, the same party, I believe, or no, it was a different party. It was some sort of art show that she was at. And she was contacted by the dead guy, telling her that like there's some sort of strange phenomenon happening at the observatory. He says that he's going to grab some food and meet her there, but they have to check it out. Like something serious is going on. This strange thing. I don't know if they super elaborate on it. I don't think she's seeing the satellite fall, though she may have. But it seems like it's kind of just like they're seeing something in the sky that doesn't make sense.
Right, and there's like a machine there that like gives a printout, like a reading of like what their findings are.
Yes.
And that's kind of like that's the ultimate goal of this part of the loop is, get the satellite or get the telescope in the right position so you can see the sky and get the printout.
Yes, because it's being tampered with by Mr. Scratch's forces of the Taken.
Yes.
So initially, after speaking with her, you're tasked with going back outside and like turning something back on. Like
the power's all fucked up. Yeah. You turn on the lights to keep the Taken away from the power. There was a little bug trying to get in my mouth.
Oh my.
Yeah, you have to turn on the lights on the power
grid
thing, whatever those breakers are called, yeah. To keep the Taken away because they're sabotaging it. This
throw a car at you.
This is very basic. This is a little bit less in depth than the first loop, which had like multiple locations with the motel and all like the surrounding RVs and the diner. But basically, you're getting it in so you can get the readout.
You're getting it in so you can get the readout. So you do that. You fight the Taken. Shoo him away so that Rachel can place the telescope how it needs to be to get that signal readout. Now, when you talk to her additionally, she mentions that initially when Mr. Scratch got there, he was cool. He was the cool guy, the suave guy. And then I believe just at some point, once he realized that they were receiving some sort of signal, he became very hostile towards her and was like, she was afraid for her life. Like he was acting very erratically, trying to destroy. Oh, he tried to destroy some of their stuff, and that's what you have to help her fix. But you're not really sure why. You're not really sure why Mr. Scratch is being so aggressive. I mean, obviously it's Mr. Scratch, but like seemingly unprovoked. It seems like it was a reaction that he had more so than like a planned surgical attack like he's known for. So you wrap all of that up, and the signal prints out on the ancient-looking fax machine or whatever. And you realize that it is a part of a manuscript page. Whoa. And in this particular manuscript page, it signals you to go to the drive-in movie theater.
Which is the third setting.
Third and final setting.
This, again, is a pretty large map. You come in.
It is big.
There's a parking lot, and you're in the desert. All this takes place in the desert.
Yeah.
So there's like desert land all around this area, but you have a sizable parking lot, an area where you drive in to the drive-in, and then there's like the car lot, there for the theater. There's a gift shop.
Wow, did I go to the gift? Yes, I went to the gift shop. Yep.
there's a sort of like service building on the lot, and then there's another building where they do the projections from.
The projecting building.
I think there's also another building. There's the building that the lady is in, whose name is escaping me. Did you write down your notes?
It was Serana.
I want to say Demonia.
It was Serana or Serena. I thought it was funny because it's similar to the Skyrim character of the same name.
And what's her full name? Did you put it in your notes? You went to the deepest depths of the knowledge resources that we have to get this name. It is
locked within my brain. Serena Valdivia.
It sounds like, I don't know, like a Kat Von D or something. It just it sounds
Elvira.
The name sounds horny.
It does, and boy is she.
Yes, she's dripping.
You enter the administration building, I guess you would call it, of the drive-in theater, and she's all perched up against a wall, and she
is hot and bothered.
She is hot and bothered. She says stuff like, "Hey, you're back. I'm so glad. I'm scared. Don't come close to me, but do get close to me."
She says, "You can do whatever you want with me."
Yeah, she said.
I think she said at one point. I think on the third loop, she said, "Wreck my holes, daddy."
Wreck my holes?
Daddy.
I remember her saying wreck my holes. I forgot she said daddy.
Yeah.
And she's just like trying to get all that Alan's got. And
well, we should say that she thinks that, would you believe a third case of mistaken identity?
No.
Each scenario in the loop has a woman who is somewhat sexualized.
A little bit. Dr. Rachel, we'll explain it through the second loop, I think is when you learn it. But she, under her lab coat, she's wearing like a little
cocktail dress,
little black dress, yeah. And she's, dolled up. She looks good. And then Emma Sloan in the beginning, the mechanic, she's wearing just like a white tank top.
Yeah, she's a hippie.
Yeah. But they all do have like a sexiness to them. And
right.
Where are you going to that one, Matt Hall? You just thinking there are a lot of sexy ladies in this game that you like?
I usually only play games with sexy ladies. No, I do wonder if their appearance and their demeanor and everything is, part of Alan's psyche. Maybe the fact that he's not having sex if he's in the dark place.
True.
I'm imagining there's some sexual energy pent up within him. Mm-hmm. But this Valdivia here, Miss Valdivia, right?
That is true. Serena.
It seems like she was fooling around with Mr. Wake or Mr. Scratch.
Oh my goodness! How dare you?
He's a married man.
You gave me a heart attack.
It seems like she was fooling around with Mr. Scratch, and she's like, "Oh, cool, you're back for round 2." But it seems like, did you notice this? I didn't notice this about anyone else. It looked like she had been tainted by the dark presence.
Yes.
She is the only one of these characters who has the dark shadows swimming around her. And I think that that's because whether he, railed her or not, he definitely did have physical contact with her.
Yes.
And I think that he, touched her with his power and turned her.
Though she doesn't seem to be a typical Taken.
No, I don't think she's completely turned, but she's been tainted by the shadow, and like Alan's just kind of like, oh my god, she's gone, like mentally, like she's not here, like he feels bad, and he tries to talk to her, but he's like, I'm not getting into this.
I think it's interesting to explore that. Yeah, that is probably like Matt spilled all over himself. He's getting all hot and bothered thinking about this hot lady.
I did have to stop and take a cold shower when I first encountered her.
Yeah, as did I, but I kept playing the game.
Me too.
In the shower.
I used my Steam Deck.
Oh, okay. A lot of steam was coming out of that bathroom. Outside.
Yeah. But it's awesome. You can play your PC titles anywhere now.
It's really sick. I bought 2 of them.
Yeah.
One for each of my pockets. I think it's an interesting facet to explore that, this is like the existence of these like kind of hot ladies is probably a manifestation of Alan's perhaps loneliness or just his sexuality as a human. Mm-hmm. And they're not over the top aside from Serena in this experience.
No, it's increasing though. It's increasing because there's a little bit of flirtation with the first girl. Mm-hmm. there's a presentation of a more sexualized outfit with the second woman.
Right.
And then, the third female he encounters is just like completely, like I said, he looked at her drawers and they was dripping.
They
to
really-
quote Blowfly.
They really were.
Yeah, I mean, she was in heat. So
she was ready to go, and she did have that aura of the dark presence.
The escalation there, I just, I could be reading too far into it, but I do just wonder if that is representative of another part of Alan's psyche, because I think everything in the game is
likely very much so.
And also, I do think that in one way it represents, temptation, because, he wants to stay true to his wife. And the thing that, we learn in this area when you encounter the radios, I think we didn't talk about in the previous scenario, the radios eventually switch from interviewing the old gods of Asgard to interviewing Alice, Wake, and Miss Valdivia.
I think I missed those.
Are you serious?
Yeah. Holy shit.
Oh. Every time you go to the radio, it's different.
Yeah, and I played all the ones that I could find, but I don't think I found any that weren't.
To give you a little context
really?
Here. So Valdivia, Serena Valdivia?
Yeah, and I know she has a relation to Alice, and a working relationship.
Right, so Serena, through whatever means, has been working with Alice. Alice is a photographer, as is established in the first game, but she has some home movie footage of Alan.
Yeah.
And Serena's in charge of a local film fest.
Mm. Taking place at the drive-in.
Right. And so Serena is encouraging Alice to put in some of these home videos she has, and they've edited it together, and Alice is kind of insecure about it, not only because it's obviously sensitive subject matter, because her husband's gone missing.
Still missing, actively, yeah.
And the DJ does ask, is this hard for you? Like, how do you feel about this? And they're trying to figure out, is Alan dead? Is he gone?
No, there's a radio in the building where Serena is. Mm-hmm. Serena. I only did it the first loop. I didn't hit it the second and third time. I totally missed it.
It goes on to explain that she is at peace with Alan's absence. It's been 2 years. She can't live in the past. Doesn't mean that she doesn't have, it doesn't mean that she's over it.
Yeah.
But she is having to go forward with her life. And so obviously, yeah, it's a little strange. So it's a little difficult, but she does put these pieces in anyway. And so there's a film that is, this vacation footage or something of Alan and Alice. The clothing that Alan's wearing in this game, you may have noticed he's not wearing his 15 jackets anymore.
Yeah, he's wearing a white shirt, undershirt with a black and white
flannel
overshirt or something like that.
It's something kind of, I would say, not at all like what you're wearing, but
no,
but similar.
He's got the same shorts.
Yes, same hat too.
Yeah, Alan Wake's swear he wears a really cool backwards Vans hat.
But that clothing, he mentions that he took that outfit on because it was from a memory he had. It's the same memory that's in that footage.
Fuck me, I can't believe I missed this much.
Oh. Well, it'd be worth it to go back. I'm sure they're on YouTube or something.
No, they're not. Damn, so, I feel like a moron. Here I am making a big old video about... I feel like I missed a large portion of the game if I missed those. I can't believe
I would say you did, because it explains a lot about how Alice has been living over the last 2 years and her connection to Serena Valdivia.
I might play through... There is a really good chapter select after you beat the game that allows you to jump into any 3 of the settings in any 3 of the loops at any time. Oh,
interesting.
Yeah, so I think I might have to do that.
Yeah, you can just pop into those and listen to those. But it's really interesting to hear, what Alice has been up to and how Serena's connected with her and stuff. And so,
but you do, even if you miss those radio stations, I was aware that they had a relationship, that Alice had made this video from the home movies or whatever, and she was going to be playing it at this film festival. So you do get that even in the most core, you don't miss that aspect of it.
I think they only explained that through the radio.
Really?
I think you got it on your first time, maybe. But
Okay.
it's an extended interview.
Wow, I'm a silly goose. Well, anyway, one moment that I thought was particularly hilarious when Alan first, and to give him some credit, Alan doesn't really feed into the horny. He doesn't take advantage of this woman like Mr. Scratch may have. At one point, I think it was in the second loop, she's like going on, she's like, you could do anything you wanted to me. You could even use my, and then he cuts her off and he's like, don't even go there. I was like, I gotta get out of here. But
I think she was going to say, you could use my Sam's Club membership and like get like bulk anything.
that's
the deals are outrageous.
That is so outrageous that Alan could not bear to handle it.
He's like, come on.
In polite company.
Where would I even store anything I bought? I don't,
50 pounds of watermelon. I don't know what to do.
It's the square ones.
For Minecraft.
From Japan.
Oh, yeah. Minecraft's in Japan. Or Japan's in Minecraft. It has a very similar multiple realities.
Okay, I this is totally off topic, but I'm just going to say it because you said that Minecraft. I saw someone built some of the buildings from Control in Minecraft.
Really?
Yeah,
that's pretty cool. Can you show them on screen right now?
Yeah.
Wow, they look good. So anyway, instead of pouncing on this tiger, Alan Wake does the right thing and he says, I can't help you just now. I'm going to go, she's like, this is really funny. I thought like all the interactions with this woman were very funny. Alan talks to her and she says, she like repeats something that Mr. Scratch told her about not turning the lights back on. Mm-hmm. And he says like, you're not supposed to turn the lights back on. And Alan like kind of like tricks her because she's in this like kind of like drunk state. He's like, yeah, of course, I'm not going to do that. But can you remind me where they are just so I don't accidentally turn them back on? And what he means is a power switch at another location to power the building that she's in to turn the lights back on. And it was really funny and silly. And I'm proud of our boy for being...
I'm forgetting how... This is like the largest map, I think.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, because you do eventually see all sorts of enemy types, but there's a sort of... I don't know how to put it. Like a series of, breakers and all that kind of electrical power stuff.
Yeah, oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
But you
like
start seeing
warehouse.
spider webs.
The spider webs.
And spiders, like nightmare spiders start... Nightmare spiders, I heard one just now.
Yeah, scared me.
That came out of the mic. Nightmare spiders start like manifesting in the world, and they're annoying.
I think it began at the observatory, IIRC, and yeah.
You're right.
I didn't expect the spiders.
No, it's funny because it's such a shitty video game trope. Like, I'm a grown-ass man and I'm fighting bats and spiders.
Yeah,
but
I liked their mechanic.
Yeah,
you could kill. So they were beings of darkness, but you could just blast them.
And they even mention that in the game.
Yeah, and they come in hordes. There's like tons of them. That's the difficulty.
They leap at you.
They explode out of the ground. You can blast them. Just you don't have to use the flashlight on them initially. I like the spiders.
Yeah, I thought it was a nice little variety of
even though
enemy.
Spiders, a little cliche. It was fun. That was one of the first things that you're like, oh wow, this is way different.
I'm glad they didn't do it in Alan Wake, but in this standalone story where the rules are a little bit different because we're in this, episode of Night Springs essentially.
Yeah.
I think it really worked, and it was nice to have an enemy of a different height.
Yeah, more so than the and maybe we'll get more of that later on. I like the spiders, and then I like
turtles.
I like turtles as well. It was interesting that you could just blast them.
Yeah.
Or shoot them with the flashlight. But did you find the crossbow in the game? Mm-hmm. There's a crossbow in the game, and for some inexplicable reason that I can't figure out, aside from they were just like whatever, like this is its own individual thing. The crossbow could hurt and kill the Taken without needing to use the flashlight at all.
Right. So again, in case anyone's unaware, the Taken, the Shadow enemies, they're normal humans basically who have been wrapped up in a sort of shadow shield, and the shadow takes over their brain. Some remnants of the individual still exist, but they're these shadow monsters, and you can't hurt them.
Yeah, it makes them stronger and more agile, but they cannot think for themselves. If
they have a sort of hive mind. They all attack the same enemy.
And as it's explored in the one of the two comics a little bit more, but if somebody has a particularly powerful conviction in life, That will remain, as we saw in the first game. From like the forest ranger would say things like, wear look out for ticks as he was fighting Alan.
Yeah, the personality's not entirely lost, but their will is.
Yeah.
And that's actually something that is, their sort of self-determination. That's something that's explored in one of the episodes of Night Springs in Alan Wake. Do you remember the episode in Night Springs where the guys are beating the man?
I might have missed the beating the man.
There's an episode of Night Springs in Alan Wake where a guy is being chased by two other men, and they basically like beat his will out of him. They beat his self. I don't know what the word I'm looking for. Like his self-determination, his self-motivation. And at the end, he's like, oh, well, what am I supposed to do now? And they're like, well, it'll tell you what to do. And it's his self-control. I don't know why I couldn't think of the term. He has no self-control and he has no autonomy. They literally beat it out of him, and that's I believe that to be a sort of echo of what's happening with the Taken, where part of their personality is intact, but their autonomy and their ability to make decisions for themselves is removed, and it's the dark presence guiding them. But essentially, if you use your light on them, any sort of light source, but in Alan Wake's case, it's usually a flashlight. You can burn away the shadows, which then makes them susceptible to ballistics and blunt objects.
For you to blast them.
But the game does say that for some reason, the power of the crossbow allows it pierces through the shadow and can harm the individual underneath without having to burn away the shadow first. I think it was just a fun mechanic for them.
That's probably what it boils down. That's probably what it boils down to. And boy, it is very satisfying to blast somebody with a crossbow and have them disappear. Like the gun, we've said it before. The gunplay and the combat and controls in this game are so much better than the first game, and they're just so good. While we're on the topic, I don't think there's going to be another better time to talk about this. They also introduced in this game, when you press the left trigger, when you press it all the way down, that's always how you use your flashlight to show it on somebody. That's how you do the charge. You can also half press the left trigger to aim without using your flashlight. You notice that?
Nope. I don't think I did.
It's mentioned in some of the tutorials, but I couldn't get a feel for it. Even still, I've been playing the arcade mode. It's hard to half press a trigger. It's like you don't really know where to, and I'll get a feel for it, but you don't really know exactly where you need to keep it. But when you do that, it allows you to aim without also using your flashlight, which is helpful for, when you don't want to use up your batteries and stuff.
Interesting. I don't think I caught that.
The last quirk that I thought was an improvement over this game is that something that happened a lot in the original Alan Wake is that guys would get you from behind. You're focusing on this stuff, and they work like a pack of wolves.
Yeah, they flank you.
Yeah, pretty much a bunch will fuck you, get your attention, and then there's another couple get you from the back.
Yes, a bunch will fuck you and get your attention.
They'll fuck you up front.
And they fuck you from the back.
And then they get you from the back. So in the first game, sometimes there's moments where, and they would give you an audio cue, but sometimes you're just like, well, damn, I didn't realize that guy was coming from behind me. In this one, Alan, I don't know if you noticed this, when there's a guy coming from either behind you or your left or right side, he'll look over to them while you're still shooting. Did you notice that? Did you?
I may have.
It was a really great visual cue.
I noticed him looking at things in the game a couple times, so I do believe so.
And that was really helpful to because Alan would have in his peripheral that you could see a guy coming from over there. So that was really helpful in some of the denser combat sections.
I believe I noticed, I could be pulling this out of my ass, but I believe I noticed the same thing in God of War. There's sometimes collectibles and things and the items, and the character, if he's idling, he'll kind of look at
the area. That's cool as hell.
Yeah.
I thought it was a really nice touch. So from this
what's the
point
point of being in the drive-thru?
So the point of being in the drive-thru.
Drive-in.
The drive-in.
Theater.
Alan goes through the drive-thru earlier to get some food.
Yeah, I think it's a Sonics.
Yeah.
We don't have those up in our area.
You see a lot more of those, Southwest. So you go turn on the power and return back to Serena. And she is, with the power on, it removes the darkness from her, and she's able to tell you what she's experienced, what's going on. She talks about Mr. Scratch and how he kind of put the woos on her, and you.
Woo!
That's what he says. That's how he infects people with the Taken. You need to get to the projection room. Mm-hmm. I believe she tells you that that's the last place she saw Mr. Scratch. And there's a big battle in each loop that happens in the drive-in area, because that's like obviously the projection room is right where all the cars park.
Yeah, you can't enter the projection room because Shadow overtakes it, and it says like defeat like the Dark Towers or something. There's
there's also you can't go there. You can't go to the projection room early because she has a key code that you need to get into the building. In addition to that, the dark it's all covered in the dark presence, and there's like these little towers that come out that are like crane arms. Or like just like industrial.
They look like mini versions of the oil derrick almost. I don't know what they were exactly because they're covered in shadow, and also you're getting basically you need to shine your light on them. There's 3 little towers within each one. Mm-hmm. You have to break each one down as you're getting swarmed by high level enemies.
Yeah,
it's a fun little piece that every time, as we near the end of the loop, it'll become obvious that you do the loop again. A little bit better what has to happen. And so that part's a little easier.
Yes.
But the enemies get a little more difficult each time.
And there is something that there is that gradual increased difficulty where there's like an unexpected thing or like something shifted in a way that is a little bit different from the last time. So when you say there's 3 loops, you do not play the exact same thing 3 times. That would suck.
No, you're just in a time loop. Again, another element of Night Springs in the first game is being caught in a time loop.
Was that another episode?
Yeah.
God, I really regret, like I mentioned this earlier, like listening back to the first, I've played Alan Wake. I was pretty thorough in my one playthrough that I did of that game, because I thought we were just going to make a video on it and that was going to be it. But like if I had known, more what I do now when I first played it.
I think if you had known that you were going to be so into it.
Yeah.
I don't think you knew the effect it would have on you until you experienced it.
Yeah. Especially now that, we're doing Waketober. So if you happen to watch that video, just know that at that point, I didn't know.
I think a lot of people don't know.
I feel like I might just play through that game again or just explore, watch compilations.
Why don't you wait and just play the remaster?
I could play the remaster coming out October 5th. I can't wait. It's going to be great. Anyway, so this is the final part of each loop.
I'm sorry. I just need to say to the viewer, you're seeing this. The remaster's already been released at this point.
Oh, you're right. Maybe I'm playing it right now.
Maybe you are. I just don't want anyone to get confused about time.
Yeah. God forbid you get confused about time in a Remedy game! The projection room is the final setting of each loop. Once you finally destroy the towers, make your way in, it's another one of the settings where one of the rooms or places that you have to match it to the manuscript, which is the signal that you got from the observatory. Mm-hmm. I don't remember what exactly it says at this point. It has you whatever it asks you to do.
Yeah, there needs to be basically it doesn't tell you what to do exactly. It says
it's
it was late at night. Mm-hmm. Summer was almost over. So you need to set the calendar to the right month, set the clock to the right thing. And so there's a poster that needs to be revealed. You need to put a spotlight on the fire extinguisher. So it's just, you just have to look at it, interpret the clues, and figure out a very small puzzle.
Yeah. And the poster in particular, I thought was interesting. On one side, it was an Alex Casey film poster, mm-hmm. and the other side was a Tom the Poet poster, mm-hmm. which I didn't really know what the fuck that was.
Right, a movie called Tom the Poet that had a
diver guy on it.
Yeah, looked like Thomas Zane.
Thomas Zane, yeah.
Yeah.
So that adds credence to it, that it's just some weird. This entire thing is just a fabrication of Alan's mind. You don't think so? Is there a Tom movie and an Alex Casey movie?
I don't know if you want me to spoil this for you.
Does it concern a game in the series I haven't played yet?
I would say that if you go forward in time, about 7 years, maybe almost 8 years, you might learn a little bit more about what seemed like a very throwaway, there's a Tom the Poet poster. Do you notice there was a Tom the Poet poster in the introduction scenario in Alan Wake.
Of the first game?
Yeah. On one of the billboards, or not billboards, little bulletin boards, you're walking through and there's a QR code and there's also an image of the diver.
No, was it in the beginning of the first game?
Mm-hmm.
What the fuck?
Same poster.
Don't spoil it all the way.
Well, that's something that you just missed, but why would there be like a movie poster for that character?
Oh, fuck, really? Holy shit, should I say it on camera?
Sure, I mean, you can speculate.
My speculation is that maybe Alan goes on to write a film about that person? Those people?
Possibly.
Holy shit,
I
okay.
would say no. That's not what I'm getting at.
No?
No.
You might have to spoon feed it to me.
I'm not going to.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'll let you
simmer on
experience this one yourself. It has to do with control.
Okay.
Yeah. Basically, what seems like a very throwaway little thing where it's like, oh yeah, they had an Alex Casey movie. Maybe there's it's a reference to Thomas Zane. Like, that's another thing from Alan's mind.
Okay.
But the fact that it's a Thomas Zane
film?
Tom the Poet movie poster has so much more significance that is revealed in the AWE expansion pack of Control.
All right, well, that is the next...
The other thing that's interesting about the projection room is there's a Death Rally arcade cabinet.
There is.
Which is just a neat little Easter egg. It doesn't have anything to do with the game itself, but you turn it on, it plays Death Rally, which is...
Remedy's first game from 89, I think? Or
96.
1996. I was very wrong. But I don't remember if we mentioned this in the last Yeah I've Played, or in any of these fucking Alan Wake videos that we've been making. You found something interesting about Death Rally in terms of a character named within...
There's a character named the True Tom Reimer, who is a sort of disembodied voice that, speaks to you through verse, sometimes in a poetic way, full of metaphors. And it's just interesting to note that there's this, poetic character named Tom that speaks to the protagonist through some sort of supernatural means.
From 1996.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is interesting how the Remedy continuity began.
And that's, and I would say this is another instance where it's not necessarily saying Thomas Zane, the poet, is True Tom Reimer from Death Rally, but that the appearance of Thomas Zane, the poet, is an echo of that initial idea. Not everything in the Remedy universe is a one-to-one, it's this guy, Just Alex Casey is an echo of Max Payne.
Right.
It's not necessarily the same exact thing, but and you think of an echo, the sound comes out, it bounces off, it deteriorates. It's not the same.
Can I do an echo? Will you put an echo effect on it? Like a cool delay and reverb?
Sure.
Piss!
And you can hear as that decays, it's not the same as the sound that you first made. It's a little bit different, And I think an echo is the best way to think about the way that some of these story elements appear and reappear throughout Remedy games, in addition to an actual canonical shared universe.
Right. Well, anyway, about that traditional shared canonical universe, at this point, when you do complete make the room as the manuscript page suggests, you realize that you do not have the entire manuscript page, and what you did was unsuccessful.
Right. So you didn't quite get it, and you're sent back to the start of the loop.
Yes. Mr. Darkness engulfs the projection building, and you go into another one of those live action shots of Alan facing off with Mr. Scratch, starting loop 2.
Yeah, you get your ass beat, and we're at loop 2. Do you want to take a sip?
Yeah.
Or are you going for your notes? I don't know what you're doing.
I was going for my notes.
Oh, well, hey.
About water.
Get hydrated, and then why don't you tell us what happens?
In loop 2? Here's what happens in loop 2. Mr. Scratch taunts Alan, saying that he'll be trapped here forever, and then he attacks him. After that, Alan wakes up again in front of the sinking cabin in the desert. Alan meets back up with Emma at the motel, and she has a memory of the past loop where she met her demise. Fortunately, Emma has gone out and acquired most of what you need to match the oil derrick to the manuscript page for you, aside from a battery that was taken by a Taken. After the satellite falls, Alan learns that Emma has the motel keys as well as the diner keys, since she works for the same company. This allows Alan to skip checking out the diner again in favor of going straight to the motel room where a dead Michael Faraby's keys allow Alan entry back into Mount Redtooth Observatory once more. Unfortunately, this new event doesn't prevent the Taken from getting Emma. Dr. Rachel Meadows is intrigued by this strange altered world event and helps Alan get more of the signal this time around, using her big fancy telescope thing. After restoring power to the projection building at the drive-in, Alan once again tries to match it to the signal's description, but it's just not enough.
His name is Michael Faraby?
Michael Faraby. I don't know, it says Barnaby or something earlier, but yeah, Michael Faraby. Because I had that thought in my head. I was like, oh, because I kept noticing, I'm like, where the fuck is the guy that's the assistant to
Meadows.
Rachel Meadows at the observatory? I was like, why is he not, where the hell is he? I was like, I don't understand, are we waiting for him to show up still? And then it clicked with me. I was like, oh, I got the keys from a dead guy. Maybe that's him. And further on, it's explained that, he was, I think, maybe I missed it entirely, but maybe he was trying to pick up food from the diner that
would make sense.
Mr. Scratch happened to be at, and they got into a tussle. I don't remember how he gets back to the motel. Maybe...
I mean, he may have just kidnapped him and taken him there.
That's what I'm assuming.
Something I want to understand is how does the satellite readout turn into a manuscript page?
I don't know.
Is that just through magic?
I think that is just through magic, because you literally watch it print out. And Dr. Meadows is kind of vague about the signal and the output, whatever it is.
So the signal... Well, there's also the Signal DLC.
Yes, from the first Alan Wake game. Yeah.
Interesting. I don't know. That was something that was honestly like, I haven't done like a super deep dive into everything about this game. I guess some of it we can just chalk up to dream logic or whatever, but
yeah.
Very, very interesting to me that would give him the manuscript page and that, the information is coming from the sky. And the other thing that became kind of obvious to me when the second loop started.
Mm-hmm. The cabin?
The cabin, I didn't really think about it, but he talks about how, he was able to transport Night Springs to Arizona for one night only.
Yes.
Because that's where reality had worn thin enough for him to come through. It seems like if he's in the cabin in the dark place at the end of the DLCs, that's where he's writing Return, We see the cabin in the water at the start of the game. Does he crawl out of the water, like out of the cabin, and that's why you're starting right there, like at the,
In the live action scene right before each loop, it shows Alan covered in rubble. Mm-hmm. And he kind of stands up and looks around, and that's when you take control of him, and then you see the cabin in water sinking down.
Oh, they show the cabin sinking in the live action scene?
Not in the live action scene.
No, that's what
I only see that in the game.
What you're talking about is taking place at the drive-in.
What's that?
What the live action part? His confrontation,
yes.
where he's he wakes up in the rubble, and everything. That's I don't think he wakes up in the rubble, but he passes out in the rubble.
I think what happens at what kind of like the first live action in the beginning, and then at the start of the second loop, it seems like Mr. Scratch unleashes this crazy like thunderclap or something. Then
a sonic boom.
A sonic boom, and then Alan wakes up. It's still in the live action. He wakes up in the rubble. There's something on him, and then he looks around, and then you take control, and then you go into the game.
I see. Well, either way,
there is something implied.
That's the loop.
Yeah.
That's the loop. But how did he get from the dark place to the loop?
Oh,
you know what I'm trying to say?
It is
like
probably...
outside of that. I'm wondering if he is like, that's the cabin. Mm-hmm. He comes out of the cabin. Now he's in the Night Springs world.
I also noticed the cabin, it's just like a chunk of it. and like two of those like port holes, like you'd see on a windows that are you see on like on a boat. It's illuminated more on each loop to like draw more attention to it. First time it's just the cabin. Second time there's like a giant bright green light inside of it. I didn't realize it was the cabin the first time. I guess I was just like so like what, huh?
Right. It's not explicitly stated, you know.
Right.
But it's the Cauldron Lake. It's the Bird Lake cabin.
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely. So from this point, you go meet back up with Emma, and she's done some of the stuff because she has a memory of that past loop and how Mr. Scratch and the Taken got her.
Which I don't think we mentioned the first time around, but
yeah,
that loop ends, basically because Alan fails, everyone's doomed.
Yeah.
Every time. They keep dying, waking back up, and because of their connection to Alan, he's helping jog their memory. They're like realizing, oh yeah, I am caught in a time loop.
Yeah.
And we also don't know, when the game opens, how many times has he done this loop already?
Yeah, it's ambiguous. I would assume a couple, at least, judging by Mr. Scratch's reaction.
Yeah, and Mr. Scratch is like, you're never going to fucking do it, buddy.
Yeah.
You're going to be stuck here forever, and I'm going to go kill your wife. Idiot.
Yeah, and I'm going to kill your friend, Barry Wheeler. Jumping ahead a little bit, Dr. Meadows is a theoretical physicist. She's like fascinated with like these phenomenon and strange, crazy things. She's very analytical, very pragmatic isn't probably the word to describe it. She's very into this kind of weird shit, and she accepts it very well. And at one point she's like, well, what happens if you succeed? And he's like, everything should go back to normal. You should continue living your normal life, which explains further what you're saying right there, that if Alan does it successfully, they should break out of the loop.
Right. And he also is very adamant that you can't fucking talk about me.
Yes.
And I think
almost to like a scary degree.
Yeah, he basically like threatens her. Because
obviously Serena knows who Alan is. Like I remember when he first tells her, she's like, "Oh my God!" Like
he says this to Rachel.
He tells her, but then Serena also knows who you are. I'm saying that they both.
Right.
Yeah,
but I think what I want to get at is more that he's just adamant. Don't fucking talk about this.
Yeah.
Don't tell anyone, because I think what he's trying to prevent is Alan Wake talks a lot about like myths and urban legends, and it seems like he's almost trying to prevent like becoming a myth, an urban legend. Like he doesn't want people to report sightings of him because of the power that might have over the perception of him. It would affect how he interacts with reality.
Do you think that would damage his what little control he has to dip back into the reality from the dark world?
My basic understanding is that the collective conscious of people, especially with urban lore and urban myths, urban myths and even things like Bigfoot and shit.
Shitfoot,
shitpickle, and all that kind of stuff. It feels like for as much as Alan from the Dark Place is able to affect reality, the collective conscience can also
feed into that.
Can also affect reality and kind of like, like even it's talked about a lot in the Alan Wake files as well. Like, just urban legends, like the power of that and how like some things, because enough people talk about them, believe them to be real, they become real. And so like if they're discussing Alan Wake in a certain way, like the urban legend version of Alan Wake could become more powerful than the version he's trying to construct, which is he's trying to put himself back into reality. And that's a bit of speculation, but the fact that he's so like he makes a huge deal out of it to like
he's very serious.
Don't fucking talk about this.
Something that could add to that is Alan had never heard of Thomas Zane until he got to the cabin where he found an old box full of his work. And considering the popularity of Thomas Zane, and how Alan was as a famous writer himself, he even noticed. He noticed. He's like, it's strange that I had never heard of this guy.
Yeah.
So maybe there's something to that where it's like you know, it's like reinforcing what you said, that the collective conscious, their opinion on something can affect its stake in reality.
Yeah, and Zane, I think, disappeared after he went into the dark place. You know, when he took the evil version of Barbara, he took her down, and they went away. You know, a form of the dark presence using the sort of guise of Barbara did return, but Alan, I should say Thomas, when he went into the dark place, when he went, purposely dove into the depths of Cauldron Lake, that did effectively erase him from reality.
Wow.
But the shoebox, with the books in it, he did, before he left reality, because he knew he was basically going on a suicide mission, he wrote a rule that anything left in that shoebox would remain in reality, and that's how he was able to not be completely erased from reality.
Wow, that's huge.
So,
deep shit.
Yeah, so I mean, and you notice the clickers in a shoebox.
It was, yeah.
Yeah.
So is it all shoeboxes?
Shoeboxes are a surprisingly powerful
object in the world of Alan Wake.
Not to say they are an object of power, but they are powerful objects.
Don't want to be confused with that terminology there. Oh man.
So anyway,
it's really true. It's not a lake; it's an ocean.
Yeah. So I mean, I feel like we're getting a little off topic, but it just the whole thing is. It was very striking to me the way he completely did a 180 in his mood and was so aggressive with her about not talking about him.
Yeah.
Not talking about this phenomenon or that she saw him or anything.
From a gameplay perspective as well, a lot of that additional dialogue is completely optional. So if you do just want to blast through the game, which I don't recommend, you really should dig deep. If you don't want to continue talking to the NPCs, you only have to have the one interaction, but it's really very worth it to talk all the way through with them.
Yeah, there's some pretty in-depth conversations each time around.
Yeah.
And each time around, they're coming to terms more and more with the situation they found themselves in.
Rachel in particular, yeah. Because she mentions, I think by the third loop, she's like, I remember everything, just get up here, we got to start doing our stuff.
Yeah, she's the most adaptive, whereas the mechanic lady, Emma, we didn't really talk about her too much. She's, I said she's a hippie. She's a modern, crunchy type. She is a
spiritualist,
a bit of an anomaly because she's also seems like a greasy mechanic type.
Yeah.
She's also it seems like she's smoking weed and crystals.
Talks about crystals.
Medicinal herbs.
Alan gets a little jab where she's like, let me give you some crystals. They're good for this and that. And he's like, are they good for taking out the enemy? And she's like, oh, no.
It's funny because, that's another thing that Alan is such a, a realist. He's he
it's kind of ironic,
the supernatural. He hates myth. He hates, I think it comes up in the first game where he's kind of he's I don't believe in that kind of shit.
Yeah. Meanwhile, in that same conversation with Emma, he's he has that, you explained it earlier, he lays it all out for her, very blatantly when she asked him about it, and he's like, you want to know what's happening? Okay, fine. There's the shadow dimension that I have to, and he explains it as briefly as he can.
He's but what you're talking about is absurd, and I won't have it.
It's a very funny irony there.
Yeah.
It's this testament to his character.
His stubbornness, especially,
Yeah.
So, gameplay-wise, between the second, third loops, nothing really changes except that,
some things are already done.
Yeah, because the people are helping you. Mm-hmm. So you're every time you're that much closer to getting things the way they need to be to match the manuscript pages.
Yeah.
And also, again, this is what's really interesting to me about understanding how the Dark Place works. Alan wrote the manuscript and then has to live it, essentially, to get the desired outcome.
Yes.
And it's just interesting to think about that when you think about the events of the first game and how so much went so wrong.
Yeah.
And is it because he was not really aware of the rules, aware of what he was doing? He didn't really know how to navigate. And so, the amount of things that like blew up in his face in that game, he was eventually able to successfully rescue Alice. He didn't rescue himself.
No.
Why didn't he rescue himself? Because he wasn't experienced enough in the rules of the Dark Place, and he fucked up.
Yeah.
That's my interpretation of it. Just going off of what he's saying now with how it works, like he's like still kind of struggling to understand how to get the desired outcome.
In the first game, he also mentions a large factor in writing and creating in the dark presence, or with the dark power, is believability. It's like the story. It's almost like the same like concepts that you'd have when writing a story. It's like it has to be believable. There has to be real ramifications. People have to act realistically.
Yeah.
So that's like a huge part of the art as well. Which if we're taking a ginormous step back, is just a really interesting reflection on writing of a believable, interesting story.
Yeah, there has to be like a certain sort of logic that is, this transparent logic where you don't like always go like, oh yes, I see he's doing this because his motivation is this, and yes, that's true of his character type. And it's like you don't want to think about things on that level,
realistic
unless you're the
ambiguity.
architect.
Yeah, which I think is another factor that like it's an interesting how that parallels like into like real life, where bugs are flying around your face.
Get that out of here! I don't want to hear about real life.
And it's crazy how like that's just probably drawn on a lot of experience that Sam Lake, the writer of the game, has had as a writer. And it's interesting how far-reaching that goes. So yeah, it's not to gloss over the second and third loop too much, but things are just ready to go. Quick, you get a little bit more dialogue and interesting stuff from the NPCs. You get more radio shows,
and you do get more enemy varieties.
Yes. By this point, I think I believe it's the second loop. It could have been the third one. Whatever. When you first begin right in the canyon, you start making your way downtown, and you get attacked.
Yes.
By a big motherfucker. Now, there's this giant... you see him a lot in all the trailers for the game. It's this gigantic Taken with a hand... oh, I know what it is. Hold on. It's a...
Isn't it a chainsaw?
Yeah, but it's like a I think a miter saw, but like a handheld one, where it's like a full ass saw blade, and he just
like a circular.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But without it being specifically a circular saw, it doesn't matter. Whatever. He has a big ass saw, and he's huge. He looks like a monster more so than like a human.
Yeah, and Wake mentions that.
Yeah, what does he say? It says like...
So he's like, what the fuck are you? Like King Hillbilly?
King Hillbilly. That made me actually laugh. I thought, like, there's, like I said, a couple moments in this game that are really funny. And that's one of the really interesting variations that you get in this game of the enemies. That's explained that it's Mr. Scratch's... his take on Taken and how he's able to manipulate them. In addition to that, there's also the guys that don't have the shadow around them. Remember those guys?
Are you talking about the ones that split in two?
The splitting guys, yeah.
Right. See, he mentions how it works, where it's like they're still affected by the dark presence, but not in the same way. Something I wish I could remember word for word what he said, but essentially, like when you shine your light on them, instead of breaking apart their shadow shield, it literally breaks them in half
into
two smaller versions of themselves.
Up to 4 total, I think. You can split those guys. So
as much as there's a logical story explanation for how that works, it's also that's another fun enemy type.
Mechanically, it's awesome because one thing that I praised the DLC parts of the first game for was the flashlight was no longer just about what you're hitting. It's also about what you're not hitting and what you don't want to hit. You don't want to hit those guys with and it's a little bit easier in this game because we forgot to mention it. In the first game, just pointing your flashlight, even without like doing the charge with the left trigger, it would also affect them. It would start doing damage, and then it was just more damage.
Yeah, you could passively affect them with your flashlight. You couldn't in this game, right?
You can't do it, no.
Because I tried to, and I was like, I don't think it's working. Shit.
It doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't. It does not make the darkness go
away. So you need
away.
to purposely hold the trigger and focus your light on people to have any effect on them.
Yes. So with these guys, you know, if you're getting swarmed, you don't realize that it's that enemy type, and they look distinct enough. You're not going to confuse them for the other ones, but still in the moment,
heat of the moment, yeah.
I remember every time I flashed one of those guys and he'd split off into two more, I'd be like, fuck! But like, it was a really cool and engaging, new enemy type.
Yeah, having all the different enemy types always swarm you all at once as well. As the game goes on and they introduce more and more, like, you're basically getting swarmed by all of them at any one point.
I think there's two more.
Yeah. You just, like, you have to remember their behaviors, how they work, and how to manage in what order you want to take them out in. Not only in proximity to you, but also, like, tactically, like, what's the best order to take them out in.
Yeah.
It's a fun thing to balance.
Alan Wake isn't as helpless in this game. I'm not going to say he's like a action badass, but like he's closer to it than he was in the first game.
Yeah, for sure.
Instead of just like surviving, it's more like the best way to get through. You know, like I can handle this because I'm kind of badass. But it's more about like paying attention.
As much too. He kind of says like, as long as I have my flashlight, my gun, like it's dangerous, but I'm doing it.
I'm okay. Yeah. The other two new enemy types are the grenade thrower.
Yep.
Which was kind of interesting. Mm-hmm. They kind of just hang out in the back and they throw like pure ball of darkness at you that explodes. It's effectively a grenade, but it was in that moment. Maybe it was a manuscript page that Alan explains that. I mentioned this earlier. When a Taken becomes a Taken, they can't really operate like they say that using guns is too intricate for them. They wouldn't be able to aim and shoot. Like that's too like requires too much dexterity and thought. That's why most like all the Taken just have like an axe or a hatchet because it's more simple for them to hit. So it's not a real grenade that they throw, but it's just like a concentrated darkness that they kind of like lob at you.
Interesting. It reminds me of how striking it was the first time in The Evil Within when there's a similar enemy to the Taken. Like, there's people who have been warped by a similar sort of dark presence.
Yeah.
The first time that one of them pulls a pistol on you, you're like, what the fuck is
shit!
That? They can use guns now? They are kind of like...
They're kind of bad at it, but yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if in, Alan Wake 2... fingers crossed, maybe we'll start seeing some of that as well.
Yeah, I think we'll see Alan Wake 2 next year for sure.
Who he said it? The final other new enemy type was kind of like a combination of other ones. The fucking birds are not in this game, but they still kind of are. Instead, it's an enemy type.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you forgot those guys? They fly around as the birds, and then they quickly manifest into a Taken. And then they attack you really quickly, but they don't require you to flash the light on.
Their bird form is just an evasive maneuver.
Yeah.
It's just that if you're not keeping track of where they're at, it's like you're doing battle on the ground. You got to keep an eye in the sky as well to be like, where is he going to land so I don't get hit by him when he comes down.
So much better than the birds.
Yeah, I couldn't stand the birds. And I'm glad they thematically were able to keep the birds there in some way. But interesting enemy types, like in terms of just like. We're talking so much about the lore and all that kind of like stuff, but it is just fun combat. It is, for sure. The combat is a lot of fun, and it is, I think any complaints people had about the, how repetitive or, a lot of people think that the combat in the first game is unfair because Alan is more agile, to which I say, I guess, but like, it's just the mechanics of the game. That's just how your character moves.
Yeah.
If I had like super fast like FPS, movement in that game, the enemies would then have to be balanced completely. Like the world would have to be different. Like he's a slower character. You just gotta adjust. I get that's not for everybody.
I had a hard time specifically when I was younger, reconciling that because I was used to playing games where you're the fast FPS badass. So I'm like, why am I so slow? This is dumb. But it's like, well, the whole game is also slower. It's it's not focused on the same mechanics.
Right. So, but I would say if anyone was like really just like, I love Alan Wake, but the combat leaves a lot to be desired. This game does, I think, really satisfy any complaints people might have had about the combat.
For sure.
The enemy variety as well. Because in the first game, the enemies are all, there's basically like slow ones and fast ones.
Yeah.
Some throw stuff.
That's about it.
Yeah.
So
and the fucking birds, but
none of them, aside from the grenade thrower, none of them in this game throw anything. Combat in this game is so good. It feels so good. It's good enough that I've actually wanted, and I have been playing the arcade mode as well.
Yeah, I tried a couple rounds of that. I wasn't as into it. Maybe it just wasn't the right time. I could see if I was like, it's very addictive.
It is.
It's it's a horde mode thing where they come in waves. You're in a large open area, and there's items, weapons and batteries, scattered throughout the stage, but they're around. So like you need to kind of like scope out where those are and move around the entire arena because you are going to run out of ammo.
Absolutely.
You get to like, I think it's like 10-minute rounds.
It is 10 minutes. You got to survive until the sun comes up.
Yeah, so
It's
like
10 minutes.
by like 7 minutes in, you're pretty sparse on ammo. Like,
Absolutely,
I ran out of ammo, and I survived because I was able to like hit like the evasive maneuvers at the end. But
Oh yeah,
Like-
or like using your flares and stuff.
or just dodging and running, and even then you have a limited stamina, so you can't just run. So it was interesting. I don't think you can actually kill all the enemies, right? You have to. They'll just keep coming and
they'll keep
coming.
coming,
Yeah.
I think there's 4 levels total, and then each one of them has like a nightmare difficulty mode. I think I'm on the last two nightmare difficulty ones.
Yeah, there's like and there's settings that weren't in the game necessarily. I remember the first one's a graveyard.
Yeah, graveyard is cool, like some sort of like Old West looking place. They're sick. It's really fun. Usually a lot of games have a quickly tacked on arcade mode, it's horde mode, and it's lame and I don't really want to play, but this game feels so good combat wise that I don't know, I might try to beat it all the way.
Yeah, it's just it's a fun arcade shooter.
And with 10-minute rounds, like I don't know, if you lose, like whatever. You
10
know,
minutes, yeah.
you keep going.
So back to the story, like let's say you go on, we've said it so many times, you can only say it so many different ways. You're a little bit closer each time, you're on the final time. You're back inside of the projection room.
Are we on loop 3 now?
Let's say it.
Do you want me to read about it a little bit, or should we just go right into it?
I think we said all we can say.
All right.
I mean, you basically just you do the same thing over and over. It's just you get a little bit better at each time.
I think the main takeaway from loop 2 is that you get a little bit more data on the telescope readout, but it's not enough.
And everyone's helping you a little bit more each time as well. Except for, I think, Serena's still in a trance every time.
She's still pretty fucked up, yeah.
Yeah.
But
Which shows the power of Mr. Scratch.
yeah. So yeah, moving on to the third loop. Same business, except this time when you get the signal readout that we were just talking about, you get the complete signal. And I think the doctor, Dr. Rachel and Alan both seem to just know that it's the complete signal. I don't know how they did. But you take that to the drive-in, and this time, you do all your stuff. You have the largest battle in the game at the drive-in to get back to the projection room.
At the drive-in is playing, yeah.
At the gates is playing afterwards.
There's also, before we get there, we should mention, in the third loop, when you're setting the telescope up, that's where we have the Balance Slays the Demon fight.
Yes! Oh shit, that was so awesome. So the kind of mirroring that when you're at the Anderson compound in the first game, when you're on the stage and you have that horde mode where Barry's messing with all the lights and all the Taken are coming at you. You have a similar experience in the observatory where they kind of break out of this little center thing, and they're crawling out, and inexplicably the music just starts playing. But I think that's explained because it's a TV show. So the Balance Slays the Demon starts playing, and that song's fucking pretty alright. Did you like that one?
I thought it was corny as hell, but it's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I thought it was.
you know,
it felt the most authentically like it would be like an 80s song.
I did kind of like the battle. I preferred the music for the. I don't remember what the song is now.
Children of the Elder God.
Yeah,
I
I
believe is what it's
prefer
called.
that song if
Yeah.
I'm gonna put the two against each other. But there's also
That's kind of like more Sabbath, and this one's more like Journey, maybe. Or like that one's more like Sabbath, and this song's more like
Ozzy.
yeah,
You know,
yeah. Fuck it, that's good. I like that.
they do repeat the same motif of an epic battle set to a Poets to the Fall type song in Control, and that one I think is the best iteration of this idea.
Does it play the happy song?
No.
By Poets of the Fall.
No, my God, no. That's the American Nightmare song. That's Mr. Scratch's theme, essentially.
But that's just the Poets of the Fall song. Like, that's...
right.
Like, they didn't make that for the game.
No, but I do think that that is his theme. And it
does play.
Yeah.
I think in that last battle, or like previous to it, at one point in Loop 3 when you're at the drive-in, I think it's you go like restore the power, and on your way back you get a big wave before the final battle, and that's when it plays.
Yeah, in the parking lot, or in the car park where the cars line up to watch the projection.
Yeah. Oh boy. What a song.
Yeah.
What a track.
Listen, I'm not here to shit talk what I think is a bad song, but
I think it fits this. I liked it.
It fits.
In the song.
It's just
I think it's a fun song also, but
I think it's super cringy. But also, I have a lot of respect for those guys as artists and as a band.
Well.
So I don't need to like everything they do.
It's true.
But it is fun. You know, Balance Slays a Demon battle, and it's funny because I was wrecking those
I was
guys.
kicking ass, yeah.
And it's like, by the end, like, the song, just kind of like, I noticed the enemies appear through the end of the song, but by the end of the song, it was like, there was like one or two guys. It was kind of like, it's like, oh, well, all right. So we should mention, there's a little bit of in a classic satanic panic metal move, there's some backward speech in this song.
Yes, that's very true.
It'll happen again in another town, a town called Ordinary.
Ordinary.
Is the backward speech in this 2012 Poets of the Fall Old Gods of Asgard song.
Like 3/4 of the way through, you miss it, honestly, if you're not paying attention. Now, the implications, as I understand it, and I'd like to know what you think, is that I believe they're referencing that another event like what's happening right now or what happened in Bright Falls
will happen. An altered world event.
Yeah. Will happen in another place.
Called Ordinary.
I'm taking that as two things. Ordinary could just be the actual name of a town.
It is Ordinary, Maine.
Oh, no shit. Okay. I wasn't sure if that was just like, because it was capitalized and I was like, Ordinary. I wasn't sure if that was also
a town called Ordinary.
Yeah, but I didn't know if that was just a weird poetic way of saying like an ordinary town. So there is a real town called Ordinary, or a real in the world town.
Yes, which is the hometown of Jesse Faden, the protagonist of Control. Now, Ordinary also makes a brief appearance in Quantum Break.
Okay.
But it's interesting to note that this game was released in 2012. Control didn't come out till 2019. Now, of course, the game was obviously in development for a number of years before it was released.
Right.
But
the Quantum Break in between.
Quantum Break was released in between, which is also a whole development cycle. And it wasn't until relatively recently that Remedy had enough staffing to break up and become a multi-game studio.
That's right.
So it's just very interesting that
they planted the seeds so early.
So early on. You know,
it begs the question on if they have. I think it's unrealistic to assume that they had this entire shit planned out since the first game, but I think they're really good. Sam Lake and his team are really good at writing options.
Yeah,
but that's not like always.
I think so, but also, I think that Alan Wake was intentionally supposed to be a trilogy. I think I've read that. I could be making that up. And they did have,
meaning
almost immediately,
a full game, a second game, and a third. Not like
right.
American Nightmare is not the two.
Yeah, right. And people think American Nightmare is like Alan Wake's attempt at writing Return, like he talks about at the end of the first DLC. I think this is a one-off adventure. Not to say it's non-canonical, but I do kind of think that maybe the trilogy was in large part written by the release of the first game.
Christ.
And the fact that they had, I think 2011 or 2012, Alan Wake 2, like a prototype of Alan Wake 2, like for their pitch meeting with Microsoft.
Yeah.
If you look online, there's IGN, I think, released the prototype footage of Alan Wake 2.
It's pretty cool. I watched it.
It
has like pop-up video on it.
Right, yeah, and it was internal. It was an internal thing. It was part of their pitch for Alan Wake 2, which was rejected by Microsoft, and they said, let's make a new IP instead.
Resulting in Quantum Break.
Right, but for a pitch, you wouldn't only give the company some gameplay. They would have said, here's the continuing story.
You would have provided that. So, yeah.
I'm imagining there is at least a rough outline of the major events. So, I mean, that's just my 2 cents on it.
It seems highly likely.
I think that you're right in saying that, they write in such a way that gives themselves room to branch off and create new ideas as they come to them. I also think that the only way you can do that is to have a pretty solid foundation ahead of time.
Yeah, that is a good point, because I can't give you an example of any other moment that would be like a thing that was just open that they could come back to that they haven't come back to. I don't see these little bugs that you're swatting around.
It's a very small fruit fly.
All right. Well, you're a fruit.
Oh,
those are
my arms.
Spiders.
So
coming out of the ground.
I don't want to get too theoretical in this video, because I feel like we're already doing a lot of oh my god, what the fuck kind of moments here.
Yeah. So you want to wrap up the story of American Nightmare?
He finally gets everything correct.
You get the full signal.
And the last thing you do
in the
projection room
is you play Alice's film about Alan Wake on the screen. And there's this big dramatic scene where a fruit fly attacks Matt. And then
I wouldn't mind if you didn't keep going for my mouth and eyes.
That's how they get there. She's trying to get into your brain and control
you. Go through the ear.
It's just a big open hole that'll fly right in.
I think the nasal cavity is the easiest way, actually, if you're thinking about how they used to prepare mummies.
I don't know a lot about mummies, Matt.
They pull the nose out through the brain.
Oh, that's brutal.
Or they're the opposite of that. They don't pull your nose out through your brain.
That's now you're thinking with portals. Mr. Scratch is on top of a bus, like a school bus, in the parking audience, whatever, like where all the cars park to watch at the movies at the drive-in.
Drive-through.
Drive-through, drive-in. Keep saying it. When you turn on the projection, it's super bright light illuminates Mr. Scratch, and seems to kill him.
Yeah.
He begins fading away, and he's screaming, it was supposed to be my life, and he's like,
and
all it's my stuff.
It's my life.
He says, it's now or never.
Rips.
It's really cool. It's a really dramatic scene.
Wow.
Alan Wake is famous for all of its licensed music, so as he's torn to shreds by the light of the movie, we get to watch. I don't know. The question is, do we get to watch the actual movie? We don't actually, because
you see a bit of it.
You see like Alan standing at like a cliff.
Yeah, he's watching a sunrise.
A beautiful sunrise, but then who else but Alice shows up?
She's in the film as well, and in this, again, another tier of reality, Alice and Alan are reunited.
Yeah.
And then we fade to black.
And it's the
credits roll.
And if you wait until after the credits, hoo boy, what do you get? You get a nice extra bonus scene with Barry Wheeler.
And he's waking up.
He goes,
and he's like, what? Al?
And yeah, he says, Al?
And it's the end of the episode of Night Springs.
Yeah.
Al? So what's reality? What's not? Again, this is not the video. This is not American Nightmare fully explained, because I don't think there is a full explanation.
I don't think there is. My personal headcanon, and that I like to think for this little extra scene, is that something about Alan, I call him Al, because I'm close with him.
You can call me Al.
Transcended the, just being on TV. Like you said, the Night Springs can be a conduit for the dark presence. And I think Barry either perceived Alan's presence near him, or that there was some sort of communication that Alan was able to make with Barry enough to like jolt him awake and think that he's in the room.
Yeah.
Which is like kind of nice, because Alan's been gone for 2 years. They're assuming he's dead.
Right.
So it's kind of cool that his buddy, we've talked about their relationship and how Barry is kind of slimy, but it was, I don't know, it'd be kind of cool. It's kind of nice to think that he got a little like hint that maybe Alan's not gone.
Maybe love conquers all.
Yes, that's what I was trying to get to.
So I would say, in a nutshell, a pretty big nut. That's Alan Wake's American Nightmare.
I think this game, you should absolutely play it if you play Alan Wake.
Yeah. If not, at least play the arcade mode.
Arcade mode's dope.
You'll get the most out of the experience, and you won't have to be bogged down with all of this nerdy story stuff.
Yeah. Well, happy Waketober to everyone out there. We have a bunch more Alan Wake videos coming out this month of October to celebrate the release of the remaster. If you like this video, please hit like. We really want to know what you think about Alan Wake. That's why we do this entire channel. Well, mostly about games, but in this particular...
So we ran out of battery. We
did.
Actually ran out of memory card space.
It's true.
But to bring it back all together, I think we've said all we can about this relatively short game. 5-6 hours.
Yeah, and it's just the length of this video like is a testament to when you play Alan Wake and then you play this game. There's just so doggone whatever.
What the fuck is wrong with you?
I don't know. There's so much to talk about. It's so dense with that context that even a much shorter experience in Alan Wake's world is still something that you can spend literally hours discussing.
Yeah. As is illustrated by our channel and all of the videos that have been coming out.
For Waketober.
I would say even before Waketober, but yes, the whole month of October is Waketober here on Hidden Machine, so be sure to check out the other Alan Wake themed videos. And over to you.
Hit the like button, watch more Wake, and thanks for watching.
Yeah, and please, if you got some shit to say it.
Yes,
I'd love to get into it with someone who thinks I'm wrong, and so I can slam them.
We would love to hear.
No,
we would love to hear your wrong theories about Alan Wake.
no, I love hearing other people's theories. I think that's the fun of doing these kinds of videos. Like, how do people interpret the materials laid before them? So
Stuff that we missed.
yeah, let's get into it.
Let's get into Alan Wake.
All right.
Yeah, I played.
You can't.
American Nightmare.
I feel like it always sounds so weird when you say it.
What? Yeah, I played.
Yeah, but
Yeah, I've played. Yeah, I've played.
yeah, I've played.
Have you played Alan Wake? Yeah, I've played Alan Wake.
That sounds better than. Ask me if I played Alan Wake.
Have you played Alan Wake?
Yeah, I've played
Alan Wake.
Alan Wake. Sorry for the long extended pause in between.
Yeah, I played Alan Wake.